Extreme neglect in childhood, where adults literally don't care for you appropriately, can lead to a kind of emotional leakiness, where you've created a good life and you set goals as an adult. But like a lot of people with complex PTSD, you may feel disconnected from other people, no matter how connected they actually are to you. And that memory of not being cared for can creep into every situation. You feel it with people you date, with friends, you feel it at work or school. And if it's not healed, the irony is that it will cause you to get into and stay in relationships where, in fact, you're not cared for. And you can change this. You can. My letter today is from a young man I'll call James. And he writes, "Dear Fairy, I'm stuck in a conundrum with my close friendships and don't know whether I can salvage these relationships or if it's better to sever them." All right, I've got the fairy pencil. I'm going to circle things I want to come back to. But let's go through and see what James's story is. I was always a shy guy, and I think it stemmed from the fact that when I was younger, I was left alone a lot. When I was born, my father worked on the other side of the country and came home once every 15 days, if we were lucky. Ooh, that's hard. My mother also worked as cook in a diner, so she was always out in the morning and night with just a small break in the afternoon. That's hard. So I was mostly looked after by my maternal grandparents, and even that was not ideal, as my grandfather was a construction worker, so he was out working all day, and at night he showed his worst side as an alcoholic. The only one in the house who gave some attention was my grandmother, who also worked as a dressmaker and often liked to decompress watching TV after work, so she was either sewing or watching something, preferring not to be disturbed. All right, so you were neglected. That went on until I was 5 and my younger brother was born. We moved out of our grandparents' home and into our own. My mother took a break from her job, so I thought I could finally get some more attention, but I was wrong. I was in fact even less relevant than before, as now my whinings were a bother to her. I grew resentful and distant from my family. Even more when the year after my other brother was born, I was just expected to help and follow orders. I endured hell through my teenage years and had a breakdown during my first year of university. Okay, there. That is not uncommon. Kids who hold it together a long time have a breakdown in college. After I took some time off, I am now close to graduation. It wasn't easy to have to work to sustain my expenses, and now the last push feels unbearable. I feel like Sisyphus working more desperately every day, hoping that finally the next big thing will make the boulder roll on the other side of the hill and finally make things easier. Obviously, that also took a toll on my very few friendships. Lots of my friends are as broken as I was at the start of my journey, and now that I've progressed, even if just a little, it bothers me how most of them pain themselves in saying that there's no solution to their problems or that it's impossible to get better, but they don't even try anything. I suggested stuff to try, and nobody even bothered. Oh, to heal? Oh yeah, I'll tell you why that is. Okay. I feel like they are bad influences that could keep me stuck in a bad mindset, but I also don't want to lose them. First and foremost, because I care for each one of them. We share experiences and lots of times together, and although they clearly don't show me the care I show them, nobody checks in on me. I ask them how they are on a weekly basis, for example. I feel like somehow they care for me in their own way. I don't know if that is enough of a clue to let them go, but another thing that really holds me back a lot is that they're also friends with a lot of my other friends, so if I leave them behind, it may affect the rest of the friend circle I have around that. Leaving them would leave me with little to no other friends, all of them much more distant than the closer ones I have in this group. I just don't know what to do. I feel trapped either way. In the past, when I felt like this, I stayed alone. I dealt with the problems and emotions by myself, and then returned to my friends. But I feel like that is not a healthy way to resolve things. I fear loneliness and I don't want to be alone, as I know that it can be damaging, if not worse. Deep down, I just don't feel cared for. There it is. There's the core feeling. I just don't feel cared for. So being with them and feeling ignored is suffering, and being alone is suffering. I just can't escape it in the short term. But what can I do in the long term? I'm so scared of the idea of being forced to make new friends, as people will probably feel the neediness and intent and stray away from me even more. I also feel like I'm somehow responsible for the situation, even though logically I know I did all I could to better these relationships, try to find new friends and all. So it just isn't my fault. I feel once again like the child nobody ever wanted. Yeah, there it is. Abandonment. Wounds of abandonment and neglect. That's what it looks like. So thank you for this, and I'm grateful for what you taught me. I hope you can reach out to me again. Yep, I can. All right, James, let's talk about what's happening here. So what I love about this is when two of us have had a common experience, the one who's not having it right now, or at least not having your experience right now, can have some perspective and share it. And that's why you're so brilliant for reaching out about this. I utterly recognize your feelings as ones I've had before. And I mean, I hate it when people go, when I was your age, but I think there is something age-related about this, just in that the breakdown comes in college, like you're finally away, you're at this really new stage, it's kind of unsteady, but you're also on your feet again. It seems like a lot of people write to me during or after that kind of breakdown. And it precipitates a crisis, because there you are. I think it feels like when you finally get out of the house, it feels like, okay, everything's going to be different now. I'm finally away from these people who have been making my life so hard. And then we start to make contact with the part of us that's wounded, that's with us, no matter if the parents are in the picture or not. You know, they're no longer hurting you actively every day. You're just having a wound every day. And so the good news about it is what is going on inside you is a lot easier for you to recognize and change than what they did. Like if you were trying to get them to behave differently, I'd be like, oh, give up, buddy. You know, it's really hard to get anybody to change like that. And it's really hard to address things in the past unless, I mean, every once in a while, somebody will show up in your life and say, I want to talk about what I did in the past. And I know I hurt you and I'm really sorry. I want to talk about that. But it does not happen very often. And happily, we can heal anyway. Like that's a nice thing that can restore a relationship to something deeper than it was, or bring it back from, you know, non-existence, or not. Or it can just give you some information that you didn't have. It can give you information you didn't want. But you can heal whether that happens or not. You can heal the part in you that is wounded by how you were raised. And so I thought you demonstrated wonderful self-awareness here by saying that it feels unbearable trying to get through this last thing in college. I can imagine as a person who was not really supported emotionally as a kid, to have to do something that hard, and you're working your way through. And I had to do that too. And as I understand it, like nowadays, compared to when I went to college, it's much harder even than what I had to do. And it's like a grind, right? And it takes tremendous self-determination and a lot of self-denial, I think sometimes, and a lot of stress to get through it. But good for you, good for you as a traumatized and neglected person to go ahead and do this with your life. You are surviving, and I'm proud of you for doing that. And so you have these friends, and you didn't describe exactly what it was, but they just don't have a healing mindset. You think they're traumatized, and you probably are right. It sounds like they're a bit trivial about it too. So here's what I see as the difference between you and them is you have self-awareness right now that something's wrong that needs to be healed. Whether that's because you're just faster to develop that as a person, or because you have enough pain going on that you had to figure it out. And they have so far successfully compartmentalized it. Rest assured, people who haven't dealt with past trauma, the trauma will generally catch up with them. They may compartmentalize it, but over a few years, it's very common for it to sort of come crashing down late 20s, early 30s, where, the compartmentalizing isn't holding anymore. And life is demanding more realness, authenticity, clarity about things. And that compartmentalizing comes with a lot of cost of, poor perception, shallow relationships. So it sounds to me like you formed friendships when you were at one place in your life, compartmentalized, less self-aware. Now that you're more integrated and more aware, you just don't fit with these friends. You've outgrown them. So welcome to healing. People who heal, we lose some friends, and that's what happens. We outgrow some friends, and some of them we choose to keep around because we're so fond of them and we can deal with it, and others we just find too exasperating. Or probably more often the case, people who when you start healing and changing, it annoys the other people. They're just like, oh, Mr. Healy here, you're trying to heal everything and you think you're better than me, don't you? There's some of that too. You probably encountered it already. So if people are going to give you a bad time because you're making positive changes in your life, at least it helps you be clear. But if they're just sort of trivial or partying or continuing to make terrible mistakes, what I'm hearing is that it's bothering you and you would like to be able to help them get to your level or use your tools. And that's where I would say probably best to let them find their own path and just trust that they will. Sometimes people say, oh, I watched your video or I tried your daily practice techniques and they're great and I really want to get this person in my life to do it. It's a friend, a sibling, a partner, a parent, a kid. And I'll say, well, mention it. The biggest thing that you can do that would make anybody else want to change is to change in wonderful ways right in front of their eyes. I think when we are feeling so clear, like, oh, this is so trivial, I'm so bored with these people, I can't wait till I'm out of here and can meet friends who are more suitable for me, it can give us a little bit of a haughtiness or something, of course. And it doesn't feel good to people. So you end up in these conflicts about it. But what I like here is your self-awareness is strong. You're reaching out here. You are connecting with people just by sharing your story here with tens of thousands of people who are going to see your video. You're now connected and you're here. You're going to end up, if you choose to, I don't know, people who write letters, I'm like, read the comments at your own risk because they come at night. The mean people who come in and just invent ways to put everybody down, you, me, everybody. Mostly though, you're going to get a lot of love. A lot of people are going to relate, or they'll have a little idea of how they have dealt with something. So you can check that out if you want. But I hope overall what you find out is you are not alone. You are destined to have friends who do match you. And the fact that you're healing means they're going to be more healed too. The people we met when we were less healed, that's what we do with partners and friends. We go to things we match. And then if we're getting better, it looks like what you're going through. And they fall away. And there's sometimes these troughs in our friend life where it's very lonely and it just feels like, well, that I never should have healed because now look, I have nobody to hang out with. But it's temporary. The new people come in. It comes faster and more accurately as people who fit you. The sooner you're not hanging out with the people who are truly generating conflict and strife for you. If you're just staying friends, though, because you're compassionate and you're fond of them, that's a perfectly good thing to do. That speaks well of you. So you get to decide. I'm imagining that of the people that are frustrating you right now, they're across the spectrum from very beloved, but just not keeping up with your level of healing to just real jerks who, are antagonizing you with everything that you're doing. You can decide different decisions for each friend. And it sounds like you're going to be out of this school situation soon. And that's going to be yet another transition where you'll have the opportunity to meet a round of people wherever you land after school. And that could be a very positive thing or a negative thing. And it will be positive if you can continue to process your emotions and thoughts that are self-sabotaging about like, oh, I never should have healed, or I'm being too hard on everybody, or who do I think I am, or I'm projecting. You didn't say any of these things, but I think when we lose friends, it's hard not to question, did I do something wrong? So by connecting and making friends with people, even casually, who also are healing similar situations, you can be well-friended. You can always have somewhere to go. So some things that really helped me with these transition was 12-step programs. They're wonderful. Everybody's working on themselves. Well, most people are working on themselves. Some people are, just figuring out whether they want to be there, or they're misunderstanding the point and just kind of stuck in the problem. But that's okay. It's for all kinds of people. You can find people there who are working on their own problems in a way that you relate to the problem, you admire what they're doing. Those are great people to get to know. And there's a culture in 12-step groups of be friendly to other people and give them a hand up, which is lovely. That is exactly what I needed. And I remember how grateful I felt that I was finally at the party. I always somehow sensed what must be there somewhere where everybody is fairly nice and we are sitting in a circle caring about each other. I was very lonely in my life until I found that. And then there are other things you can do too. There are other kinds of groups you can do, and some people do it through joining a martial art or a sport or a theater group or a therapy group. Or if you choose, you could come into my program. I have a membership program that I particularly love. I would, right? But we have hundreds of people and they're active. We have a secret Facebook group for members, and the members can take all the courses, and they have a book club and they have study groups. Some people, they don't participate at all. They just are in their own space taking their online courses from me. But you get a lot of freebies, and we try to make it a very, very good value. So you might want to look into membership. There's a link down below to that if you want to check it out. The fact is, early trauma can really affect our ability to connect with people for a variety of reasons: neurological, social, what was the family pattern. Connecting is something that many of us struggle with. You can learn to change it. It's common in our culture for people to sleep together almost as soon as they meet. And a lot of people act like it's fun and it's easy and you can do that with no expectations, and only foolish people would expect anything or be unable to handle it, really. So for people who grew up neglected and abused, there's this contradiction. Their attachment wound is crying out for someone to love them and stay and not leave. But the culture of casual sex, which kind of has this very immediate offer of a payoff that somebody will be with you tonight, sets you up to take that need that you have for love and push you to give it up and just accept nothing. Now, healing this idea that you have to rush in and you can't ask for anything, and you have to suppress that need you have inside, that what you really want is to be loved and for somebody to know you and care about you. Like, suppressing that, it's not good for you. And it can be healed if you can get real. If you can get real and stop self-sabotaging and make a space in your life where real love can grow. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Nora, and she writes, "Dear Fairy, I'm a 38-year-old woman, and I have CPTSD from growing up in a verbally abusive and emotionally neglectful family." Got the fairy pencil, and I'm going to use it to circle things I want to come back to on a second reading, but let's see what's happening for Nora. "I've been aware of my CPTSD for several years and have developed some tools and strategies for self-regulation, but an incident 10 days ago really shook me and put me in a bad place mentally. I was dating a guy for a month who I met at a New Year's Eve party, and from the beginning there were red flags I ignored. I pursued him more than he did me. He was vague when he was talking about feelings or plans, and he straight out told me he wanted to keep things casual. Okay. There it is. That's how he feels. We spent a long weekend together, 2 weeks after New Year's, and we slept together. I told him I have anxiety and abandonment issues, and I'm trying to be more aware of them and control them, which he seemed to be understanding of." Okay, we're going to come back to that. "I got it in my head that he really didn't like me based on how little he was pursuing me and some hot, cold behaviors, and I asked him for reassurance. He would give it to me, but not very earnestly. The last day I saw him, I had driven 3 hours to see him. He didn't really invite me. I invited myself." Oh, and he didn't say I should go. Okay. "When we saw each other, he was not affectionate. He didn't kiss me or try to sit near me. He was friendly enough and was trying to include me in his activities. But I felt like a puppy dog following him around all day. My anxiety spiraled so bad, thinking I had made a mistake coming and he wasn't interested in me. And I didn't do very much to try to regulate myself, even though I know tools and strategies that could have helped me in the situation. Meditation, going for a walk, helped you like anesthetize you? Okay, we're going to talk about this. In the afternoon, I asked him if he was still interested in spending time with me because he was giving off friend vibes. And the question made him extremely uncomfortable. He didn't answer it one way or another, saying he was just being himself and didn't want any bad vibes. I think he misheard me. Our interactions got more and more awkward after that point, and it should have been my cue to step back and just remove myself from the situation, at least until my anxiety had calmed down. But I decided I needed confirmation he didn't like me. So at dinner, I asked him if he would be willing to spend time alone with me instead of partying with his friends. This, of course, made him very uncomfortable, and he basically shut down. I made things even worse by getting upset with him that he couldn't answer a simple question, and we ended up arguing. I begged a little bit for him to still see me. Pathetic, I know, she says. And I finally left. 2 days later, I sent him an apology by text, which he accepted graciously, and I haven't spoken to him since. The argument was 10 days ago, and since then, I've been in a deep depression. I'm so ashamed that I treated him the way I did. He really didn't do anything wrong. He was not cruel to me, and he wasn't ignoring me. Considering we'd only known each other a month, he was showing me a healthy level of interest, texting me every few days, liking my posts on social media, remembering little things I'd told him, etc. I've been with narcissists in the past who love-bombed me hard, and now I crave that level of intensity early on, even though I know it's not healthy. I totally ignored all the signs that this guy really did like me and that he wanted to spend time with me. He was trying to be helpful and introduce me to his friends. He wanted me to go to a party and have fun with him. His only crime was not being affectionate enough or excited enough to meet my unrealistic expectations. I think he has some avoidant attachment tendencies and was holding back for his own safety and security. We're going to talk about that too. Okay. And I totally ruined any attraction or interest he did feel for me by acting totally unhinged. On the other hand, I wonder if he was just breadcrumbing me and leading me on for his own ego or sex, and he never had any real interest in me at all. We're going to talk about that. How do I let go of this shame and regret? I should have known better. I completely lost sight of a bigger picture of who I want to be and how I want to behave and what kinds of relationships I want to have. I was so selfish being hyper-focused on having my own needs for validation and certainty and affection met that I completely disregarded him as a human, how he behaves and what he wants. I wasted my own time and money, ruined my own weekend, and damaged my reputation. This was one of the worst incidents of me acting out because of my anxiety and trauma in my whole life, and it comes after years of trying to heal and get better. I'm feeling really hopeless. Also, how can I stop thinking I ruined a good thing with this guy? I keep ruminating over what ifs. What if I had calmed my anxiety and told myself a different story? What if I'd just gone along with the party and tried to have fun? What if I hadn't gone that weekend at all? Okay, we're going to talk about this too. I try to tell myself if he was the right person for me, he would have been giving me clear, consistent signals and been open to communication. But is that reasonable to expect after only a month? I have been in so many toxic situations that I really don't know what healthy looks like. Okay, there it is. Any guidance you have would be much appreciated. All right, Nora, I got you. I'm so glad you wrote. So Nora, what I really see here is you have a grave attachment wound. It's bad, and it's twisting your thinking at crucial moments. This won't really come as good news necessarily, but I want you to completely let yourself off the hook. This idea, I ruined a good thing. It couldn't have been a good thing. I don't know about this guy. We're going to pick apart what happened here, but you are not ready for a relationship. You can't handle what you're doing right now. And what I hear you doing is continuing to fantasize. If I had just not been me and shut down how I really feel and what I really want, it could have been great. And that's true. If we were sex dolls, nobody would ever be mad at us or run away. They couldn't because we would be so agreeable. But you're a human, and you're a human who actually wants to be loved. And so one of the things that the whole reality just started to go off in a direction that was never going to work for you is that he said he only wanted something casual. And as much as you might have wanted to say yes to that so that you could have, some time with somebody, some companionship at any cost, what your experience is here just shows that is not who you are. That's not what you're capable of. That there's no way for you to do that. That once you've had sex with somebody, this is so normal. This is not just trauma, but it's especially harsh because when we were abused or neglected as kids, we're in the habit of fitting ourselves to that kind of thing. We can say, oh, I really like you. And they go, well, I just want something casual. And you know what that means. He wants sex, but not more. No expectation, no commitment, no monogamy. Did you really mean to sign up for that? It doesn't sound like it. And, if you're just like so many of us, we have this part of our brain that just goes, I'll figure it out. I'll shut myself down. I'll make him change. I'll do this. But we have to start listening to people when they tell us where they're coming from. And when, this is what my dating course is all about, is it begins, you have to be clear, like, what actually do I want? So when you say that I didn't stand up for my values and what I really want, I was confused because I think you're confused. I didn't know what you meant. It seems like you just went along with his values and what he wanted. So yeah, you had a verbally abusive and emotionally neglectful family. Very bad combo. What's happening here is a very normal sort of consequence in relationships of somebody who grew up like that and hasn't come up with the healing, hasn't developed a healed point of view on it and some workarounds so that your emotional needs can go into perspective and you don't start putting them on somebody the minute you sleep with somebody who says, look, this is casual. What that means is it's not going to meet your emotional needs unless you have none. Don't try to have no needs, Nora, don't try. Of course you have needs, of course you do. Healing from your trauma means becoming honest about who you are and what you want and what you need. You got to be honest about it. And you can't even be honest till you know. But just the evidence of how this made you feel points to casual, not for you, not for you. And that's okay. It's a rare sort of person who really is actually okay with that. So you were dating him for a month and you had asked throughout this, is that just too short? Yes, it is. Dating for a month would be like seeing somebody 2 or 3 or 4 times, right? And you're getting to know them. Now, for people with attachment wounds, where I just see evidence that you have that, where you rush in and then you can't get out, you stick around after you feel humiliated, that's an attachment wound at work. So I would suggest to you, you need a workaround to go slowly, delay sex. Sex will play tricks on your mind. It will make you attached to somebody you don't actually know yet. It will make you pretend you heard what you wanted to hear when you heard the opposite, when they're telling you where they're coming from. He didn't do anything wrong. He was very open about where he was coming from. So in terms of like trying to have a serious relationship, it wasn't a good thing. Unless that's what you want. And if you say that's what you want, your actions here are telling another story. And that's fine. It's totally legitimate to want something deeper than a casual relationship. Okay, so you spent a long weekend together, which also I don't recommend long weekends or long dates when you're just getting to know people. Keep it short. Keep it short because if you give your attachment wounds a whole weekend, all of it's going to come play out and glom onto the whole thing, That's why you have coffee first. So you met him at a party. Okay, so we'll call that coffee. Then maybe get together for a lunch. Don't even do dinner at first. Don't go to each other's houses. Don't do something that's going to lead to sex till you get to know them a little bit, till you have some conversations about, who are you? What are you into? Where are you coming from? So he told you did get to know him enough that he just wanted something casual, which was responsible of him to put that on the table. And when you agreed to it, that was, he's not breadcrumbing you. He gave you a casual relationship. And it got very weird when you invaded his privacy and showed up uninvited. So we'll get to that. But, he's been very consistent with what he said. And I don't see anything wrong with what he did. So, but you got a lot of anxiety right away. And I would just posit, I think this is very common for some of us with attachment wounds, is that anxiety and confusion shows up because we're in cognitive dissonance. We're saying we're agreeing to casual, but everything in our body and soul are just not casual at all. We're just I gave you myself. I now want you to give yourself to me. I want to have access to your life. I want to be at your side. That's what we want. Now, that's not appropriate to decide about somebody so quickly. And there are rare cases where people knew that fast and it worked out. Mostly it doesn't work out for people like us, especially. It doesn't work out. It gets us into hot water, gets us into, what I call entanglements, very painful relationships that are harmful to our progress in life and are very agonizing to get out of if we can do it or we get abandoned or whatever. It costs us a great deal. Don't want to do that. You want to be going in consciously, making a conscious decision with the part of you that cares about what you want and what is in your best interest, and not the part of you that's just this little child that's just I need love, I need it right now, no matter what it costs me, I don't care. I'll take anything I can get. But then this is what happens. Then we hammer them. We're I expected love. And they're I told you that's not what this was. So there we are. I understand. I'm just helping you like reason out what happened here. So yeah, he told you just wanted casual. You said, I have anxiety and abandonment issues and I'm trying to be more aware of them and control them. And he seemed understanding. It doesn't matter if he understood. It was you who wasn't. You did not take care of your anxiety and your abandonment issues. You went ahead and did things that were 100% certain to make them flare up and make everything terrible for you. So, and it's not reasonable to go on a first date with somebody and spend the weekend and go, listen, I have abandonment issues, and expect them to take care of you or not do something that feels like abandonment. He was guaranteed to do something that felt like abandonment, even if he was into you, even if he wasn't casual. You know, when you have abandonment issues, I know, I've had them too, and we project them on the situation. So things have to go very slowly and sanely so that there's some basis of a you know each other. And some people go, oh, you say we have to be friends first, but dating is not the same as friends. And dating is not the same as sexual entanglement. Dating is the getting to know you process. Some people choose to have sex during that time. You don't have to. You don't have to. And yeah, all the people who are like, there's nobody out there who would wait, but there are. You know, all the people writing me letters, certainly. So you can wait. You can go more slowly till you have more information, until you've allowed the other person to kind of show you, who are you? What are your intentions? Now that you've hung out with me several times, how do you feel about me? So you let people show you. You never have to confront them about their feelings early in dating. You don't want to do that. You want to let them just be themselves and see what that's like. Because if they're not very emotionally available, that's good information. That means go, don't do this one, okay? When you say, this is where you abandon yourself, Nora. I told him I had anxiety and abandonment issues, and I'm trying to be more aware and control them. But you mean obliterate them. And how do I just know that in your childhood, that what your parents hoped for is that your emotional needs would just go away? That you got indoctrinated that this was what you were doing wrong, is having needs, of having expectations, of needing actual time and attention from your parents. This is how it shows up, is in this weird self-attack. So then you go, here, I have this problem, you take care of it, you take responsibility for it. Well, they don't. And he even told you that's not going to happen. So you basically kind of just threw yourself off the ship there, of just like, you're abandoning yourself into a sea where nobody takes care of you, where nobody cares that you feel that way. So don't do that. Stay on the deck. Take care of yourself. Don't give yourself away so quickly. You can get to know people, and just believe me, there are people who will love you and care about you and be patient with you and be aware of your issues and be considerate about them. You know, healthy people are not going to take us on when we're not healed at all. There needs to be some healing. There needs to be some sense of ownership, like I'm taking care of this. But how you deal with it when you have abandonment issues is you don't, throw yourself out there to get attached to somebody who's already told you they're not going to stay. Okay. So you said, I got it in my head that he really didn't like me based on how little he was pursuing me. So you might be twisting that a little bit. The way you know that if somebody is interested is if they don't pursue you very much. So he didn't. So that meant he wasn't that excited about you. It doesn't mean he didn't like you. It just meant, given that he wants something casual and given the way things had played out, it wasn't inspiring him to try to run after you and try to get things going with you. He wanted something casual. That means maybe occasional, maybe there's no emotional obligation. He had some hot and cold behaviors, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, because you were in dissonance and you were like simultaneously saying casual, great, I can do that, and then being really anxious and having abandonment wounds coming up, and you said, I asked him for reassurance. Reassurance of what? Of what? He wants something casual. There's nothing he could have reassured you. So he gave it to you, but not very earnestly. And so I would clock him as he's somebody afraid of hurting you. He doesn't want confrontation, but he figured out pretty early on that your needs were way out of scale with what he was available to give. And when you're doing that, you will see people try to help you out, but not give you that love that you want. And we don't know him well enough to really know what the full story of that was, but that's how I think I would feel if somebody were rushing in, even though I said, don't rush in. I would start to feel like, whoa, you're trying to get a boundary, you're trying to get emotional distance. It can be uncomfortable and alarming, and it actually can get scary. Like you don't really know, like, how far is this going to go where somebody's not saying one thing but doing another. It can be kind of frightening emotionally. So the last day I saw him, I went 3 hours. He didn't really invite me. I invited myself, and he didn't say I should go. So right there, I feel like you glossed over what that was. That was not a good thing. And you feel guilty, and I don't want you to, it's like you feeling ashamed of yourself is not serving you right now. You feeling let's look at what happened here and see how healing would look for you so that you could do things differently next time. Everything that you've done is somebody with an attachment wound completely running the show and overriding logical information. This is part of how our brain is wounded by trauma, so it's totally understandable that this happened to you. But you're writing. I know you're writing because you want to get some perspective. It's like, but really, what just happened here? So going 3 hours to see somebody when you're not invited and basically just like showing up at their door, that's a way to cause somebody to be scared and uncomfortable even more. So that took it up to the next level. And still, he tried to be nice, but he didn't want to kiss you. He didn't want to sit near you. He's trying to figure out how to have some kind of boundary with somebody who's not getting the memo of like, hey, for all you know, because this is a casual relationship. He had a date with somebody. Maybe he already had somebody at his place, which would be his right, given that he was clear that this was casual. See, I don't do casual. And there was a time in my life when I thought that's what I had to do, but it just like killed me. I hated it. And so finally I got honest, like I just wouldn't get into something where somebody was casual. It takes time. It takes time to get to know somebody and get to where when you're actually like sleeping with them, that you actually know that they care about you, they're committed to you, they are going to be there emotionally if you start crying, right? That could happen. A lot of people don't want to hear that, and they think it's too old-fashioned. It's like, well, to those people, I just say, do what you're going to do. But I'm writing to Nora. And what Nora's struggling with, and what a lot of people who had attachment wounds suffer with, which I know about because I've had them too, and I straightened it out. So I'm just telling you, this is how you do it. You have to get like really honest with yourself. And you have to sacrifice that sort of insta-romance that can be a quick fix against the depression and the loneliness of not having anybody. And it's very seductive. The idea, if I just go along with this casual plan, I'll have a boyfriend for the weekend. It's kind of like doing drugs or something. You'll be high for a weekend, but then it's going to be terrible. And then you're going to want more. And then the worst side of you is going to come out and your life will get derailed, and it's not worth it. Here you go gaslighting yourself again, is where you go, my anxiety spiraled so badly, I made a mistake. I thought I made a mistake coming. You flat out did make a mistake. No matter how you felt it was a mistake, you didn't have his consent to come visit. And that's very important. And he wasn't interested, and that you didn't do very much to try to regulate yourself. So regulating yourself, it's not a card trick that you use to shut down how you actually feel and what you actually need and who you are so that you can go along with somebody's casual agenda. That's not what regulation is. In fact, regulation would help you be more honest with yourself. Being regulated and doing something that went against everything that you are and want would actually make you feel like crap. Okay, regulation would allow you to feel that honestly, like, oh, yuck, I don't want this. Horrors. Regulation is not a tool to shut yourself down like a drug. So all this like breathing and meditation and walking and everything, tools and strategies, we don't do it so that we can be appropriate for somebody else's agenda. We do it so we can be honestly, authentically ourselves, needs and all. Weepy little parts of our issues and all. We become ourselves. And you cannot honor and protect and heal yourself until you actually can feel yourself and you quit lying about what that is so somebody won't leave you on some crappy hangout that you have going on. A little tip I'm going to insert here, healing from this kind of relationship trouble is always going to involve a way to be happy and comforted and with friends whenever you need it. And to do that, like a lot of people with attachment wounds don't have the friends are sparse. So it's so important when you're not in a relationship and when you are in a relationship to have friends. And for me, that all shifted when I got into 12-step recovery for families of alcoholics. I had somewhere to go any night, any Saturday morning where I needed to be with people, and I could talk to them and say, hey, anybody want to go get coffee? So I always had companionship when necessary, and that saved me from a life of misery, having to try to chase that in some man. It allowed me to go slowly. It allowed me to be single for long periods of time while I sorted things out for myself, and to be happy while it was happening. So, and to have perspective. Not only that, but 12-step recovery is a way to recover. It's a way to start, getting honest and real and educated about what's going on with you, to witness other people who have similar issues and how they have a bad day or a good day or a victory or a failure. Like, we help each other by learning from each other. All right, so then you did all of that, but you didn't even use your tools, but you're just saying, I failed to shut down how I really feel. Good, I'm glad. I'm glad how you really feel just blew the situation up. It was not tenable for you. In the afternoon, I asked him if he was still interested in spending time, because he was giving off friend vibes, and the question made him uncomfortable. Yeah, right there. Well, you shouldn't have come, and once you realized it was wrong, you should have left. He didn't answer one way or the other. He said, I'm just being myself. I don't want bad vibes. Yeah, he didn't want to hurt you, so he cared about you enough, or he was a chicken. But maybe he should have just said flat out, look, this is weird. I can't do this. And you think he misheard you. I don't think he did. I think your actions were very clear. And you said interactions were getting more and more awkward. So he was afraid to set a boundary. And it should have been your cue. And then you thought, I should have stepped back at least till my anxiety calmed down. But your anxiety wasn't the problem. Your anxiety was the honest truth about how you felt. So it wasn't going to calm down. You were in a weird situation. You had sort of your trauma injury had sort of driven you into a weird situation, and then you got confused and didn't know how to resolve it. Welcome to the club, sister. We've all been there. So, and then you wanted confirmation he didn't like you. Okay, trauma-driven move. I get it. So then you asked if he would give up his plans and just hang out with you, and he shut down, And then you got upset with him that he couldn't answer one simple question. And so that's often the last vestige of our trauma wound, is when it can't get the love that it wants, it starts to get self-righteous. It's like, you're breadcrumbing me. You can't answer a question. But I'm not seeing that. I think he was trying to be as polite as he could, given that you just showed up at his door. So then it got ugly, and you begged to see him. You feel ashamed. It's okay. Don't worry. We've all done it. It's okay. It is soon forgotten. And then you finally left, and 2 days later, you apologized by text, and he was gracious. So good guy. And you haven't spoken since. And now it's 10 days ago, and you're depressed. And I understand. It's okay. Depression is a sadness that is appropriate because your trauma, it's here, it's causing pain, it's sad. Now, I don't want you to stay depressed, but it's okay to feel sad and embarrassed. Those are just natural feelings. It's okay. And the pattern that you're showing is something so common for someone who has been emotionally neglected. So it's okay. It's okay. You're never going to see him again, I think. So don't worry. You've apologized. You did your part with him. So now you're just dealing with you and what you really want, and how you didn't get what you really wanted, and how you acted when everything went the way it went. You are saying you feel ashamed and you feel bad how you treat him. Don't worry. He's a guy who would like to have casual relationships, and this is all for his education, to be like, maybe you need to get to know people a little better before you accept, it's casual as an answer. I've been on that side of it too, and I've learned that just telling somebody, look, I'm not interested in this being a relationship, but just wanting them around anyway, they'll say yes, but then they get emotionally destroyed. I've done that to people. I've been the person who's destroyed. I no longer believe that just saying that you don't want a relationship with somebody who clearly does, or who, if you got to know them, you'd realize that they do, it's not right. It's ripping somebody off. So he got what he got from his behavior. You got what you got from your behavior. There's no harm done, all right? So I would just really encourage you, let him go. If he ever wants to see you again, I'm sure he'll get in touch, but I strongly suggest do not contact that man. Don't contact him. That your apology to him is to not do that anymore. And you'll find it will allow you to heal faster. Don't let your trauma wound will play tricks on your mind and go, no, actually, I need to say something else. No, actually, I think we could be friends. No, it's your trauma wound talking. It's just, you had your experience, like, what can happen with me and this other human being? You had that experience. It sucked. It was awful. Okay. When it's a good match for you, it's going to feel good and uplifting for both of you, at least some in the beginning. Sometimes things get off to a rough start, but there's just so much evidence here. Like, it's time for you to heal, Nora. It's time for you to do that. Yeah, you're right. He wasn't cruel, and you're blaming yourself for craving intensity. Don't even bother blaming yourself. It goes with the territory of growing up neglected. It's not your fault. It's just it's a wound that you carry that you now have to protect and defend. You have to go slowly. You have to communicate clearly, and you need emotional support from other women who get it. When we get together, and men with men, women with women, generally speaking, and I'm just, if people are straight, it's just so that you're not trying to get your emotional support from somebody who's secretly in love or you're secretly in love with them. We just need friends who get it, friends who are walking the path of recovery, and they can help you, and you can go, I want to call them, and they can go, no, don't call them, come over here, come on, we'll have a grilled cheese sandwich, right? That's what you need. You need actual love and support. When you go to somebody who, didn't give that to you before, thinking this time it'll be different, it's what we call going to the hardware store for milk. It's not there's no milk. You won't get what you want. And then comes even more depression. So just close that wound that's making you depressed right now and start doing the things that are healing for you. So yeah, he did show signs of liking you. He didn't know you yet. You were masquerading as somebody who was totally fine with casual. So, it sounded good to him. And, he tried to be polite to you, and he withdrew. And then there's this weird twist, and I see this. This is what I call the limerent twist, where you start to think, I have to have him. And maybe instead of him rejecting me and just it getting weird because he was too polite to make me leave, but he clearly didn't want you there, then you go, he has avoidant attachment tendencies. Well, I doubt you know that after one weekend with him. I doubt you know that. I think he doesn't want a relationship with anybody or possibly just you. And I want you to just let that in. He might have perfectly good ability to attach. And you say he was holding back for his own safety and security, also because it's not what he wanted, also because in his knowledge of himself, it's not what he wanted. We want everybody to be able to know what they want and to seek it out and to behave consistently with what they want. So he's doing it. Now you get to do it for yourself, and your template is different. And you said, I ruined any attraction and by appearing unhinged. And it's not just about how he feels about you, or it would have been great. It's not just about that. It's just that for you, the reality of being around him was a very upsetting reality that didn't feel good at all. And sometimes those of us who grew up neglected, we can't really get that perspective of I feel like crap when I spend time with this person. I feel really unloved. That is how you feel. That's why we date, is to find out, how does this feel? How is this? How do they feel? What do we end up doing with our lives when we spend time together? And then you said, I wonder if he was just breadcrumbing you. I don't think he was. I don't think he was. He had a weekend with you. He had a casual fling with you, which is what he said. So maybe you were breadcrumbing yourself by saying yes to it and then thinking you could change yourself to make that work. It's okay. I'm famous for, I'm very direct with people. I'm like, no, I think you breadcrumbed yourself. I think you abandoned yourself. I think you crap fitted. You tried to make yourself into somebody who he would date, even if you had to give up everything you wanted. You couldn't do it. So it's okay. It's just not you. This relationship is not you. So it's okay. There's nothing more you need to do for him. It's all for you now. And you're right. You don't know yet what healthy looks like. So this is how we do it. You need tools. You need tools to cope with all the feelings that come up. You need tools that help deal with feelings of shame and guilt and blame, attack of yourself or other people, so that you can start to make sense of what happened. And instead of just feeling forever against yourself or in danger of other people hurting you, you start to have boundaries, you start to have self-knowledge, you have ways to get to know people and to get out if it's not what you wanted. And so tools and friends who support you, those are the two essentials for you, and a willingness to be honest with all of that. So I recommend 12-step programs. If you like, you can come into my membership program. We function in that way. We have a private Facebook group where people give each other a lot of support and raise questions and ask for advice from each other. They get all kinds of advice, of course. We have peer-led daily practice calls throughout the day. If you just want to put your toe into what we do here, sign up for my free course on the daily practice and learn how we, in this program, free ourselves of the fearful, resentful thinking that gets us so wound up and separate from ourselves. And then see what if you like it. If you like it, come to one of the free calls that we have every week. where we do the techniques together and take questions. We're super invested in anybody who wants to learn these techniques to come learn them well. And then if you really like it, take a course with us, come to a workshop, come to the membership where you can access all the courses. You can do that. But one thing that I do think is really important is face-to-face contact with friends. So if you don't have enough friends, some programs that you might qualify for is definitely Sex and Love Addicts, Adult Children of Alcoholics and Other Dysfunctional Families, ACA. If you had alcoholism in your family, definitely Al-Anon. These are 12-step programs where you can meet people who are earnestly working on themselves. You can learn so much, and you can feel the peace of not being judged for who you are and what's hard for you. It's so good when other people are around who get it, especially when they can show you a few things that help them. So I hope that helps. A big reason why people who were neglected as children struggle to form stable, lasting relationships is because of insecure attachment. Now, you might rush in and then get enmeshed with someone you just met, and then kind of freak out when it becomes clear that just because you're sleeping together, the commitment and predictability of a real relationship isn't there, or it isn't there yet. Now, if you're not clear what you want, not just in your mind, but in your words and your actions, you're unlikely to end up in a situation that makes you happy. And the shame of it is, you may be pushing away perfectly good people who like you, but they're put off by the odd behaviors that come out when you're trying to hide how you actually feel, how confused you are and scared. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Clara, and she writes, "Hi, Crappy Childhood Fairy. I'm 22, and since I was 11, I've been struggling with love and self-worth matters." I've got my fairy pencil. I'm going to circle things to come back to on a second reading, but let's see what's going on with Clara. "I really hope you can read this and help me with your experience. My parents separated when I was 6, and my mom was an emotionally unavailable caretaker. My father was out of the picture, but kind of present when I was little, and I remember trying to spend time with them at night since they worked all day, but he was tired and he threatened to hit me if I didn't go to bed, and a few times he did, for that or for other things. Later on, he went on to have another family, which he's committed to. Some years later, my mom got a boyfriend, and they traveled a lot around the world. At that time, I was 10, and I felt really lonely, even though I lived with a lot of family members. Oh, golly, yeah. You got abandoned. I usually got treated like a punching bag by my grandpa, who was like my father figure. He was sweet with me when I was a little child, but then he began treating me like I was dumb and obnoxious. My aunt also, she could be quite mean and accused me of not letting my mom be happy. And since I cried when she went away and I got treated like a manipulative child, I played rough with my brother, but since he was 8 years older sometimes when he hit me, it hurt more than it was fun, so I cried. But always I got treated like the problem. And I got yelled at since I was the one with the high-pitched voice. I was the inconvenience. Aside from that, I really looked up to my brother. Oh, I can kind of see where the trouble that might be ahead for you. So then Clara writes, well, around when I was 11, I met my first partner in school, and he was 7 years older, and it was a real toxic relationship with textbook manipulation and abuse, which lasted 3 years. Clara, I'm so sorry. I think I even see that as worse than you seem to see it. And you see it as bad, but that's terrible. That's just terrible. You were 11. So 11 to 14, I guess. I'm taking some details out because on YouTube, these details would affect who can see this video because it's so brutal. So bad things happen. And Clara got into drugs and alcohol. She says, but I didn't have any friends at that time, only that guy and a lot of lies. So when I ended the relationship and told my mom, she said that I had broken her trust and that I would have to put effort to earn it back. So your mom blamed you for getting exploited as a little child while she wasn't paying attention. I'm so sorry, Clara. That's just wrong. She said that I had broken her trust and that I would have to put effort to earn it back, which hurt since I was alone and still a child, and now we have a sort of good relationship. Eventually, I embarked on other love pursuits, a lot of limerence and situationships, none that lasted more than 2 months, and none that was quite healthy until today. So 6 months ago, I started talking with a guy, and we shared interests and found that the picture he took carried a melancholic view that was quite near my feelings, along with music he shared that was the same, that helped me through my adolescence. 2 months ago, so they met 6 months ago, then 2 months ago, they started going out, and he told me he ended an 8-year-long relationship 2 years ago, which ended badly. We spent time together as a couple. He stayed in my house and we slept together every time we met. We went to the movies, to the theater, to parks. We had picnics. We ate out. Sometimes I had to work on some papers. I'm in my 4th year of college, and he slept on my bed while I worked and things like that. Some time ago, we were going to meet, and he canceled at the last minute. I told him I understand, and then we didn't speak for a week until I asked him how he was doing, and everything carried out as always. But now I had a lot more doubts and fears. During the week, I cried a lot, not knowing what was happening, thinking maybe he didn't want to see me again, or maybe he just got bored. 2 weeks ago, we went to see a movie, and the morning after, he asked me if I was more into monogamy or polygamy. And I told him monogamy, and he kissed me and said, "Nice, me too." And I thought, well, that's a good sign since I want a relationship. And a few hours later, I asked him if he wanted to meet more people, and he said, "No, not for now," which made me feel uncomfortable. Like he was with me while somebody else showed up. And I asked if he would tell me if he met someone else, and he said, "Yes, would you?" So it's interesting. There's this escalation into this talk, like it's as if he said to you, no, he does want to meet other people, and you're sort of like, well, will you tell me if it happens? But he said he didn't. I don't know. You've been dating only 2 months, so that's okay. I'm going to zero in on that. And I told him yes. So he said, he said, "Would you?" And I told him yes. You will tell him if you're dating somebody else. And we didn't speak more on that. And some hours later, before he went home, you were churning, right? You were like worried about it. I asked him if we could speak so I could clear my mind. And so I told him, we're kind of like a friend with benefits, right? And he responded, sort of, you could say that. And I asked, you don't want any relationships, do you? So these are very leading questions. I'm just wondering about this, Clara. They're very leading. So I'm not sure where you got that. But when you say that, maybe you gave him the impression that that's where you were coming from. But it's hard to say. I wasn't there. It's hard to write what the conversation really was, isn't it? All right. So you said, so we're kind of friends with benefits, right? And he responded, sort of. You could say that. And I asked, you don't want any relationships? And he told me that he has envisioned being in a relationship with me. After his last relationship, he had lasted with me more than with anyone else he's tried going out with. But that he has fear of commitment and he feels safe with me because I'm kind. And he told me that he couldn't force himself to feel more for me, that he couldn't give me any security of the future, and that he felt uncomfortable because he thought he wasn't the person that could help me with my feelings. I had told him that I felt that he was playing with me, which kind of hurt since I wasn't asking for help or promises, which I made clear. I just wanted to know he had the will to stay and work things out as a couple, which he couldn't say. So Carla, actually, what I hear here, if I'm reading it correctly, is that you feel one way and you're trying to hide it and you're saying this other thing and sort of acting tough and going, so you don't want anything, right? And then you were hurt. You couldn't really, and he went, oh, okay, well, I guess it's casual. What I want to show you, Carla, is you had been dating him for 2 months. It's actually healthy for somebody not to have made a commitment to be in a relationship with you after 2 months. Now, you had decided together that you would have a sexual relationship. So that is one way that sometimes those of us with attachment wounds, or just anybody, can, we can say yes to that. We can feel like we ought to be fine with it. But then when it happens, there's this attachment there, and it feels terrible that the person is not committed to us. And this is why in my dating course and in my program, I teach people, just go slower than you think you need to. Go very slow. Once sex happens, bonding happens for many of us. So there are people who don't have that, and I don't know them, and I've tried not to go out with them. I'm interested in, committed relationships in my life, and I got it wrong many times. But going slow is how you can sort of get past the tendency to not see the red flags or to read too much into it or to take pessimism with you. What I hear here is I think you took some pessimism into this, like you wouldn't, your fear that he just wouldn't like you or be serious about you. I just didn't hear that coming from him until you sort of like, you know, forced him to answer. And he sort of said, well, I can't be forced to say that right now. And that is appropriate for dating for 2 months. You're getting to know somebody. There's such a thing as people who make a commitment very quickly. They just know it's the right one. There is such a thing, but more often than not, especially with people who have CPTSD, rushing in is going to lead to heartbreak. So it's a slow build to get to know somebody. Go slowly. Don't bond with them yet. Don't even sleep together at first. Take your time with that. Get to know them and find out first how they feel about you. And if you really feel like you want to have that attachment to them, if you want to be into them that much, the way you're going to be if you sleep with somebody. So it already happened with this person, and there's a way that you can make an adjustment. But let's see what happened here. We didn't speak for a week, and then he wrote to me and asked if he could see me to talk and to give me back some shirts. So the day came, and I was ready for him to end things with me, but he told me he wanted to keep going out. I told him that I thought that wasn't a good idea, that I had noticed I was being selfish the last time. Selfish? This sounds very distorted, and it's totally okay with the childhood you had. I can just see how you just seem to be trying to guess what the emotional reality here is and trying to guess how you should be in relationship and what you should say. And I think you're punishing yourself for feeling like you expect too much from him. And he keeps surprising you, like he wasn't leaving you. He was just giving you some shirts. In fact, it sounds to me like he was trying to get an excuse to see you. And you said it wasn't a good idea to keep going out. And the last time we talked, you were trying to regulate your emotions and thoughts about us with his feedback, and that you didn't want to be selfish with him. I don't think that's what it is. You don't want to be rejected by him, is what it is. You don't want him, you're afraid he's being selfish. If I'm reading you correctly, you're trying to, you feel very out of control. You're trying to sort of grab a narrative that you think puts you in control, except the whole thing is dishonest. You love him. You want to keep going out with him. Here's the problem. And you're sabotaging yourself. But since it's the case that I do have insecurities and fears, I felt that every time I talk about something similar, he shuts down and goes silent. We can't go on. Okay, you're not going to like this, but you're being a bit manipulative here. You're being overly harsh with him. But I think what you're trying to say is, I have insecurities and fears, and I need to talk about these things more often than we did without having you shut down. But I'm wondering if you ever talked about it without sort of making threats and going, we're just friends with benefits. That's kind of a threat for somebody who actually is into you. So he asked me, you say, what he was missing. So he's wondering, like, why aren't you into me? And I said he wasn't missing anything. So he said that he didn't understand then why I thought why he didn't want to be with me, or why I thought he was going to leave. And at that moment, I couldn't say more than because I feel it. While thinking, you can't even say the contrary. See, but that's not fair. So you were feeling it. You had fear that you're going to get left. And, statistically, that can happen. That's not crazy, but I don't think that's what was happening. That's not where he was coming from. You're saying, but he wouldn't even say the contrary. So you were testing him to go, you don't even care about me. And then you're like, is he going to say, yes, I do? But he's just, I think it's entirely possible. He's just put off. He's hurt. He's like, what is this? Why are you treating me like this? I told him that I felt that if we kept going out of fear, he would stay the same and that I would fall even more. And then he slightly irritated said, okay, look, I don't want to force you to do anything, and I won't force myself to do it. I told him I didn't want to force him either, and then we parted. So what I'm hearing there, if I'm hearing you correctly, is you were trying to force him to make this assertion that he wants to be with you, and you were putting him on the spot. If you keep going, you're going to fall more and he won't be into it. And he's just noticing he can't really promise that he's going to fall in love with you. He's just dating you right now. What I want to teach you, Carla, is the difference between dating and being in a relationship. So you were dating a guy and it was going pretty well, but your heart was having a relationship. And how would you know that with your crappy parents and how they didn't take care of you? How would you even know? So You get to know now. You're with us now, and we can help you. I'm going to talk you through this. You were dating. You were not in a relationship. And it's understandable, especially because it was dating with sex, that it's like your mind and your heart and your body are like in a relationship. That's just how it works for some of us. It's more common in women than men. It's more common in traumatized people than non-traumatized people. So you've won the lottery. You're a bonder. You feel connected to somebody through sex, which is why I say if you go slow, you don't have that bond that ends up leaving you like, what even is this relationship? Oh gosh, now I love you. Now I'm connected to you. Now I'm going to like break down if it doesn't work out. And I know that's not right. So I'm ashamed and I have to hide how I feel. That's kind of how I interpret your actions here. So you said, not once he told me, I want to be with you. Not once he told me that he could consider a relationship with me without buts, or that he was willing to keep trying with me while recognizing my feelings and knowing that both of us are wounded in different ways and with different fears. I was willing to make the effort to accommodate, and I felt he wasn't willing even to try and understand me. So maybe this is the thing with him, that he's kind of avoidant, that he's uncomfortable with these emotional conversations. But a little bit I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, because you're being overly harsh. You're being a little bit manipulative there, and I mean that in the nicest way, but you're trying to get him to say something by saying something mean. You don't love me. Yes, I do. Oh, he didn't say that. He must not. So you're trying to measure his worth and what his intentions are and how good he is by whether he passed this test that was way too much for a 2 months of dating relationship. Here's the thing about partners and relationships. It's not really their job to, it is their job to listen. It is their job to observe your boundaries. It is their job to be honest with you. But it's not their job to understand all the reasons why you feel the way you feel. I think you could do a lot better dating without putting this huge expectation that people have this deep parent-like understanding with you. Instead, you can use dating to get to know somebody and to let information come to you about, who are they? What are they? How do they feel about you? Let them tell you. You don't have to drag it out of them. It's interesting. I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday. You don't have to go questing to find out how they feel. You just have to sit back and observe. It helps a lot if you're not sleeping with the person. You can keep your expectations moderate and just notice, like, how do they act towards me? How often do they call? Do they follow through? If they say they're going to call this weekend, do they? And you can start to observe and notice, how do I feel when I'm waiting for them to call? How do I feel when I'm around them? These are your cues that it might be worth going a little next step with them. So that's dating. That's dating. You said, I know he doesn't feel the same way I do, since he told me I can't force myself to feel more for you. And again, I think that makes sense. It's 2 months in. But still, I can't be satisfied with my decision, Carla says. I miss him, and I can't shake the fact that he wanted to keep seeing me and that there was still a lot of care and affection. So this reminds me on some levels of letters I get from people who have been dating somebody who tells them flat out, I don't want a relationship. This is just friends with benefits. They shock them with this news that that's how they see them. Oh no, this is never going anywhere. And then the letter writers write to me and say, oh, but I can't stop thinking about them. I just think somehow if I were different. It's one thing if they said they weren't interested, but this guy kept saying he was interested. He just wasn't like all the way in a relationship with you yet. So in your case, Clara, I think there might be some unfinished business here. I think you may have left too early, and this is not just a simple matter of correcting the record. I think it's time for you to be working on yourself with a therapist or in my program or a 12-step program, but something where you're getting help to process your emotions and get a reality check so you're not coming in hot when you're scared, when you're worried you're going to get abandoned, because you have an abandonment wound. Abandonment wounds are hard to deal with. And what's a really good thing to do is to deal with it in your own time. And then when you're in the early stages of dating somebody, you're not hitting them with this, you're abandoning me, you can't do this, you're mistreating me because I feel this. I think even when people treat us well, the abandonment wound will put us into pain. It's just going to happen. So we got to do a lot of healing to have a successful dating relationship. And if this guy is wonderful, as you say, and the connection you feel, who knows, maybe this can be salvaged. But one thing, would be good to be able to tell him and say, I'm sorry that I jumped the gun. I actually really liked you. I wanted this to work out. I couldn't stop thinking about you. I've decided to get help and start working on my emotions because I know that when I went into fear, I just started pushing you away. Another word for this, Carla, is disorganized attachment, where you're really into somebody, but when they're right there, you push them away. Disorganized attachment. It's a very difficult attachment wound to have. It's a style. And it takes a lot of work, like really steady work, to learn to come to the center, not to either rush in with them and not to push them away almost arbitrarily. It will seem arbitrary to them, but not to you. So before we talked, he hugged me and everything was well. His affection always felt sincere, and it hurts to know that maybe if I didn't have my insecurities, maybe if I didn't have a bad history of relationships, I would be content with going out, even if he doesn't call it a relationship, even if he doesn't talk about an us. So yeah, not at 2 months. It's okay. It's okay that he's not doing you wrong there. 2 months. These days, I've been thinking that maybe I should have stayed as long as I get to keep his embrace, which feels like home. I don't have anywhere else. I'm really hurting with my decision, even though I know it was for the best, because I know that if I stayed, things probably would have changed, since he has fear of commitment, and I can't be calm as long as he tells me something he can't say. Something along the words, I want to be with you. I would like to build up from this connection with you. All right, Carla, I'm just going to put in front of you. How about 6 months? If you can date somebody, maybe that's, 3 to 6 months that you date somebody without sleeping with them, and then without pressuring them, you just wait to see what they say they feel for you and just see if you hear those words. Not with you chasing after them and threatening them. That's a bad way to get that love expressed. All of this feels like a punch in the gut. I feel like I gave him a lot and that he took it with no fear, no disgust, no rejection, and more. And he gave back to me tenderly and passionately. It hurts me that he cannot be direct with his refusal to be in a relationship with me. I think he has been direct. I didn't hear the whole conversation, but he just said, I can't do that yet. And I can't promise that's where it's going. And that is the nature of dating. We date to find out if that's where it's going. Everything feels like interpretations, insinuations, since he wanted to keep seeing me. It felt mutual, and with him by my side, everything felt nice, but I couldn't shake the idea that I was sure I wanted to be with him and that he simply didn't know. It's okay. That's normal. It's normal to know when the other person doesn't know yet. That it felt like he was testing the ground and that my fears were an inconvenience to him. Yeah, because this is the harsh truth. Having CPTSD and having the amount of fear that we have, especially when we're not healed yet, and I think you got some healing to do, it isn't very pleasant to be on the receiving end of that. It's hard because no matter what people say, they can't really fix it for us. Isn't that surprising? No matter what they say, it doesn't, they can't reassure you. It's not realistic for somebody at 2 months to go, I absolutely know you're the one. It has happened to some people. That doesn't mean it's stuck. The slow and steady route is the healthy one. You said you felt like you were in a relationship, but since you couldn't talk about it, it cannot be called that. So no, it's really normal and correct not to call it a relationship yet. This is the first time that I leave a situationship without depleting it. Interesting. Normally I leave when there is nothing left, and I feel like that's what's more troubling. We still care for each other, and both of us wanted to keep going, but with different terms. And I guess it is better this way so we don't hold more resentment later. But I feel really sad. I've been working on myself after every bad experience, trying to see my mistakes and working on them and on being better and being well while alone, enjoying my company and that of others. But it hurts so much to lose someone over my insecurities and conceptions of love. Yeah. I know I don't ask for something wacky. I just want him to acknowledge we were a relationship and maybe hopefully that he would have enough hope in it to keep building it with me. But even though I know that what I want is valid, I'm still left feeling like I'm too intense. And we spent 3 months together and I didn't want to force anything on him. I held back from expressing too much to not make him feel uncomfortable. No, I think you did make him feel uncomfortable. I just want to give you, this is what I hear. Not because you're bad, but just because, you're just you. You have your feelings. And he was uncomfortable. He couldn't go there that fast. But still, I feel like a problem, like I'll always end up alone for being too much, like I'll always feel more than the other person. And this time I chose to stay back to protect myself, but I keep feeling like it wasn't the right choice. All right. So, Clara, this is what I think. I think this one might be a keeper. And it might be worth apologizing to him while you work on yourself. And if he is willing to talk to you or see you and isn't yet in a new relationship, then maybe you guys can have a chat and see where it goes. And just see if you could, if you agree with me that maybe you jumped the gun on trying to force him to acknowledge it as a relationship when it was still so new, that you could apologize and reset. Just do a reset and say, it's okay if we date. And this time, what you can do differently is not sleep with him. It's going to be very difficult for somebody with your level of attachment wound to pace a relationship when sex is going on. It's sort of like, you know, what is it? The calf is out of the barn. Whoa, you know, all the feelings are going anyway. So you've been apart for a while. You have a chance to slow it down now and see where it is and allow communication to be how this relationship comes together. Now, if he doesn't want to slowly get to know you, maybe there isn't anything there. You can play it by ear. You can play it by ear. But just consider 3 to 6 months to be a more reasonable window to date somebody actually reserving your heart. And when you do talk about your feelings, tell the real ones. Now, feelings can be too much. It's true. When we have CPTSD, we can overwhelm people. There's a lot of pain from the past kind of leaking into whatever's hurting us in present time. And people are like, whoa, I don't even know what you're talking about. It doesn't make sense to me that you're feeling this strongly about it. So that's why we come off as too much. You won't always be too much if you work on your healing. A chaotic and neglectful family life can deprive a child of forming an identity, not just who they are, but what they like and what they want to pursue in their lives. And in adulthood, if this is you, you may try to fill this empty space with relationships, or rather the idea of a relationship to give you direction and a sense that your life matters and that you're real. My letter today is from a woman I'll call B, and she writes, "Hello, Anna." It's in really big letters. "Hello, Anna. I grew up in a home with a mother with untreated borderline personality disorder and depression. It's a lot. A brother with severe Tourette's, learning disabilities, and anger management issues. Oh, that's really a lot. And a father who worked as a long-haul truck driver who was gone most of the time working." Okay, I hear trouble coming. Here we go. I've got the fairy pencil. I'm going to circle things that I want to come back to in B's story, but let's see what's going on. It was a single-parent household with a dad I didn't really know popping in for a weekend once a month or so. My mother and brother would have very loud verbal fights almost constantly, and there was occasional violence. My mother loved me very much and became codependent with me and spoke of me like I was a golden child. But due to the additional needs of my brother and my mother's own mental health struggles, I often ended up feeling neglected and alone. I wasn't really allowed to fight back against my brother either and was told I had to love and forgive him no matter what he said or did to me. I also was held to a much different standard than my brother, because he had all those disabilities, as he had to really act out bad to be punished. But if I stepped a toe out of line, I would get blown up at because I was the well-behaved child. So I learned very early not to rock the boat. Oh yeah, that's not fair, but there it is. Due to this, I am a people pleaser and I have a very anxious attachment style. I also tend to idolize people, excuse and dismiss their faults, and I have a lot of identity issues. Okay, well those could be kind of serious. I'm from Canada, and when I was 20, I moved to another country to be with a man I'd met online and had fallen for. I loved my life in that country, almost 5 years there, but then the relationship inevitably crumbled. When it did, I had to return to Canada with only 28 days' notice. Leaving the life I had built with such short notice crushed me. And to make matters worse, I came back to find my mother had sunken into a severe depression and was all but unreachable. And my father had lost his job and had become a massive hoarder, filling up my childhood home with clutter and trash. And that was the only place I could stay. I blamed myself for leaving my parents to their downfall. I'd abandoned them, and they floundered without me. Well, I think you're writing this because you know that's not true. You're not responsible. It was okay that you went to pursue your life and have a life. Okay. It was like my entire world was destroyed and I was standing in the ruins of it with the detonator still in my hands. No. I hope you don't think that, but okay, we'll come back to that. I began trying to run away from my life, traveling regularly with unhealthy people because they could facilitate the travel for me. So I put up with their abuse to get what I wanted, anything to get away from my life at the time. On one of the trips, I met a man from Texas. I fell head over heels for him. I was convinced pretty quickly that this man would whisk me away to Texas and give me the life I really wanted, away from the traumas of home. He told me up front that he was damaged, having had a toxic childhood of his own and a string of failed relationships, that he didn't want a relationship. He said that up front, did he? Okay. He had previously been addicted to hard drugs and had tendencies of thinking about ending things for himself and a general apathy toward living. I saw his honesty about his mental health struggles as endearing and self-aware. Oh dear. Oh dear. Yep. Instead of the massive red flag I now see it was. More than a flag, really. It's a brick wall. Yeah, that was a no-go zone. That was a nuclear waste site. I thought he had a handle on them. We continued to chat, and within weeks we were dating, and I was flying to Texas once or twice a month to see him, and we were texting and calling every day. I thought things were perfect. You did? And that I'd moved down there to be with him soon enough. 6 months into the relationship, we planned a trip of multiple cities across America. It was to take around 2 weeks. On the second day, he got mad at me while at a very public event and broke up with me on the spot. The issue was we still had the whole holiday to complete. This is where I'm having trouble understanding you. No, you didn't. He broke up with you. To survive it, I basically deleted the breakup from my brain, and we actually completed the holiday while still holding hands, snuggling in bed, and being intimate. All the while, I knew I'd been dumped. It was excruciating, but I didn't know what else to do. So, my dear, that sounds like dissociation. It sounds like the ultimate crap fit there. The ultimate cool girl. Oh, you dumped me? That's okay. We'll just carry on like nothing happened. But it's telling to me, I'm just going to go ahead and comment on this letter without waiting till I get through the end, that you didn't know what to do. You didn't know what to do. And this is where your childhood comes into play, where you weren't cared for or taught or given that emotional intelligence to be like, what you do when somebody dumps you is you go and either have your own vacation or you go home, but you don't stay with them. Once somebody has dumped you, it's like poison. It's like sitting in boiling water. You don't want to be there, not only because it's miserable, but because it leads to the crazies. It just does. If you want to lose your mind, just stick around in a relationship where somebody has just already broken up with you. So you didn't know. And so I hear you. You didn't know, but that's what you do. Now you know. 2 months after returning to Canada, the pandemic hit, and suddenly he popped back up on my phone again. Did he now? Why am I not surprised? All right. We became quarantine buddies, talking on the phone and watching movies together for upward of 5 hours almost every day. All right, I got sarcastic about him there. He seems like somebody who, just wants to take what he wants and he doesn't want to have to be obliged to you at all, which made me mad. But then again, what you did when you acted like cool girl about the breakup and just stayed and had a holiday with him is you told him it was okay. You told him with your actions that you were flexible about his coming and going with his intentions for you. So you were 5 hours a day watching movies. It was remote, I guess, on Zoom, blowing kisses, calling me babe, chatting and texting constantly. Yeah, that would lead you to a certain impression. All the while still broken up, though. I thought that maybe he was changing his mind. I could see why you thought that, but he didn't say it, did he? Because at the time of the breakup and multiple times after, he would say that he didn't know what the future held regarding us ever getting back together. All right. I want to just step in and be your mentor for a second here and be like, I know your trauma would lead you to say that if somebody says, I don't really know if I want to be with you, you have this amazing capacity to hold out the possibility of the best possible outcome, that they will come around, because that's what you had to do your entire childhood. I believe in you. I will not complain. I'll just be nice and walk on eggshells and make everybody happy. I won't get in trouble. I'll be nice to my abusive brother. I won't complain about my dad's absence. But now you're a grown-up and it has to end, because this is what happens. This is what happens when you accommodate other people's terrible behavior. I mean, your brother couldn't help it. Your family really couldn't help it either. I mean, hardly anybody can help themselves. when it comes to trauma in the family. But you were not raised well. You were not cared for properly. And so now you're the grown-up who has to step in and care for yourself properly and not let people treat you like this and not stick around for it and not watch movies together and hang out for months not asking where the person is coming from and not holding on to hope that they said, I don't know where this is going, but that means maybe it's good. If somebody doesn't know, they're not good for dating. They're just not good. I'm going to suggest, I tell everybody this, if you tend to go for unavailable people, which is what's happening, it's time for you to write a list of qualities that you must have. And one of them is they love you. They're so excited to be with you. Only date people who are excited to date you. They may not love you yet, but time appropriate. It's got to be that. You can't be dating people who are like, I don't know. I couldn't say what the future is, but why don't you spend the night? Even if there was hope that they were going to come around, that will tend to kill it. That will tend to sort of ruin that possibility. Because it's a crap fit thing to do, because it communicates that you're not partner material. It's not strategic, but not that I'm saying be strategic, but it communicates something that doesn't cause people to fall in love and to, fight for you a little bit. So you've made it very easy to be indifferent to you. So this is the day all of that can change. This guy, okay, I hope you just stop having contact with him. The level of problem that he has in his life is egregious and not appropriate for dating, no matter how he felt about you. And he needs to be working on his life. And we're not doing a service for people who are fragile by being in messed up relationships with them. If you've been married to somebody for 10 years and then they have an addiction and a depression, yes, stand by them, go get therapy together. But this is just like a dating thing. Don't get involved with people who, can't even decide if they want to be alive. That is not a good plan for you. I can hear it. I can hear you don't know who to be. You don't know who to be without this guy. One day, about a year and a half into this stage of the relationship, and after 2 additional flights to see him, I got the courage to ask about his feelings toward me, and he again said he didn't know what the future held. Then he began to pull away. It was a slow process, and he never disappeared completely. He never explained why, and I was too afraid to ask. And each time he pulled away further, I became more desperate to pull him closer. That's your trauma wound. When somebody pulls away, we become desperate to pull them in closer, which is a non-logical response to somebody pulling away. The anxiety became overwhelming. I became obsessed. What little conversation we did have began to turn into therapy sessions where we would talk about his depression and not a lot else. So, but of course you're not his therapist, so it's really just you crap fitting, abandoning yourself to see if you can get love out of a depressed person, which when I say it, I hope it sounds a little bit odd, because it is. But I've done it. I totally have done it. I know, but I understand because I've been through it, and I also understand how it's not right because I've been through it. And hopefully when you hear that I did it, you can hear, that's not right. You wouldn't want that for me either, would you? All the while, I felt I had to walk on eggshells around him, though, for fear of doing something that would make him cut off contact for good. That's a terrible high wire to be on a person who doesn't want to be with you, maybe doesn't want to be alive, and then fearing they're going to cut off contact and somehow you have to make everything okay. That's really hard. And it's remote, and they don't really want you. During this time, there were 3 additional trips, 2 me going to him and 1 him coming to me, one of which I helped him walk through a mental breakdown where he was talking of ending his life. Seeing that was a genuinely traumatic experience. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Not a great idea for you at all, and not a great idea for him. If he's in that situation, he needs to be with a professional. During each trip, it was like we were a couple again, and for about a week or so after each visit, he would be super attentive, like he was at the beginning, but then he'd begin to pull away again, and thus I felt I had to keep going to get it fired back up, even though I knew it wouldn't last, and that each trip he had less energy and a more depressed mood. So I don't know if you can hear this, but isn't that just like somebody who is using a drug and a little bit, if I just keep chasing the drug, I can get the high again, and then it goes away again, and then I get the drug again. So that's what happens with intermittent reinforcement, somebody who likes you and then pulls away and likes you and pulls away. And even without the trauma that you lived through, even rats and mice will become, obsessed with something that's intermittently reinforced with them. It's just like a brain trick on mammals. And the only way to break it is to break it, to get out and stop. But here's your dilemma. I fear me pulling away from him completely may lead him to self-harm or worse. As he's said repeatedly, he doesn't have anyone in his life to support him. I feel like that burden is on my shoulders. He uses his depression as an excuse for why he has pulled away. But he did once admit to me months later that he pulled away because he wanted to quell my feelings for him and that it was good for me, even though I told him it hurt me. I identified that as gaslighting, you say, and started to see the cracks in the relationship for the first time. I want to call you on that. He's not gaslighting you. He's telling the truth. He's pulling away because he doesn't really want to be with you. And one of the reasons is he doesn't want to, he wants to quell your feelings. He at least has a heart enough to be like, he doesn't want to drag you through this with him. He doesn't want you there. I think it's natural to be really afraid when people are talking like this, to be afraid they're going to harm themselves. I've been in that situation. One time they did, one time they didn't. I hated it. I never want to be in that again. And I got some help from a very famous trauma therapist, actually, when I first started Crappy Childhood Fairy. People write to me sometimes and say they want to end their lives. And I used to spend every evening writing these long letters, pleading with them, don't do it, don't do it. And I asked this master therapist, who's very well known, how should I handle this? And they said, look, you're not even a therapist. This is what you say. You say, this is very serious. Do you know who to call right now? I want you to call right now. Call your therapist, call a hotline, get help immediately. This is so important that you do that. And I wish you the best. Please go do that. And then you pull away. That's what you do. And what I was reassured is, of course we feel responsible, like, can we keep them alive by sticking around? But you're not a therapist, and not only that, but you're kind of like strung out on this guy. You're trying to get love out of him. You're trying to massage the situation so that it turns out your way. And all of that is putting tremendous pressure on a fragile person. Sometimes it's without all these props and people hanging around and tangled, messed up relationships that we can most see clearly what we need to do. I know that's what needed to happen for me to finally recover, because I was really kind of depending on a lot of people. And when they pulled away, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. He's going to do whatever he's going to do. I encourage you not to have him in your life anymore. You don't even need to be concerned with what happens. You didn't cause this problem. You can't control it, and you can't cure it. That's a saying I learned in 12-step recovery, and it's a good thing that applies right now. You are the one who needs to be healing right now. And right now, through this dynamic of your trauma and sort of a people-pleasing and codependent urge to try to save the little bit of love that you feel like is available to you in this world, you're depriving yourself of having real friends and love. Sitting on Zoom, talking to some guy who's like, I don't know. You are worth so much more than that. So I really want to encourage you to consider going to 12-step meetings wherever you live. They have them. You can do them online. You can do them in person. In person is good. You qualify for Friends and Families of Alcoholics, Al-Anon. That would be good because of this relationship. ACA, Dysfunctional Families, that one would be good. CODA, Codependence Anonymous, that one would be good. I don't know if you have any substance stuff, but there's programs for that too. And it's so wonderful because you can begin to get honest with real people who understand about what's going on and hear them and support them and possibly make some friends while you're there and find a sponsor and get real help and start walking yourself be out of this mess, out of this lonely, sad mess you've got yourself in. It's really normal. It's not your fault that you have this wound from trauma, the way that you were raised. You got injured, but you can start walking the path of healing. I really encourage you to do that. You can also use the tools that I offer. I have a free course. I have courses you can buy. I have a membership. We have this incredible community in the membership with people who support each other with very similar things that they're healing too. What tremendous progress we can make when we have proper tools and some friends who get it. So I wish that for you.